The very first meal that we are making in this video is baked potatoes with chili. So I'm just using canned chili with beans. This cost about $2. And then I have some potatoes right there on the counter. And I calculated the cost of this at Winco. They were $3 for 10 pounds, which is an insane price. And this right here is 2 pounds of potatoes and it costs about 60 cents. So that's crazy that this alone, the bulk of the meal, cost $2.60. And then we're just going to add cheese and sour cream and butter on top. But that's going to be really, really cheap. If you want to try this out, you can do it yourself for very little trouble, very little money. So the first step, which takes the longest, is to make the potatoes. So we just have to wash them, and then after they're washed, we will put them into the oven. After the potatoes are washed, you just pierce each potato with a fork a couple of times. And then you just pour oil over the potatoes. And then you just sprinkle salt generously over the potatoes. You preheat the oven to 425 and bake them for about an hour until they're tender. And using blocks of cheese rather than bags of shredded cheese is better because I got this huge amount of shredded cheese from just a small piece of this block. So that's another little trick. The second meal that I have for you is chicken drumsticks and potato wedges. And chicken drumsticks are pretty cheap around here. They're usually $5 to $6 to $7 per pack, and that could give us 2 meals. So I'm going to be making about 6 drumsticks, and then I will show you the potato wedges in a minute. And Creole seasoning is one of my favorites for this. You just sprinkle it on top, and then I always add probably about a cup or maybe a little bit more of water. You could do chicken broth as well, but I just do water, and then that will help the chicken to turn out more moist. And then I'm just going to bake it at like 375 for probably about an hour. I usually do about 5 to 6 potatoes for these potato wedges, depending on how big they are. These are really small, so I might do a little bit more than that, but these are really nice because you don't have to peel them for this recipe. Today we're going to be making chicken fajitas. It's one of Mike's favorite recipes that I make, and the secret is in the spices. So I have this bowl right here, and what's in it is chili powder, cumin, paprika, salt, pepper, and it's just bell peppers. I have 2 green ones, You can use any color that you want to, but I'm using 2 green ones, and then I'm just going to be chopping up an onion and garlic and chicken and mixing that all together and baking it. Tonight we're going to be making shepherd's pie, and I realized that a couple things I didn't mention before is that I used to use chicken breast for like the cheap protein, but in my opinion chicken breast has gotten a little bit more expensive, and I tend to use these burger patties from Winco. You can get a pack of 3 pounds, which is 12 burgers for $10. And I get that, and then I just use 3 or 4 at a time for a recipe, and I use it as ground beef instead of like actual burgers. So that's been my go-to for meat instead of chicken breast. So I just thought I would put that in there. And so we're going to be making shepherd's pie, which is potatoes and ground beef. I'll show you guys. So while the potatoes are cooking, I'm going to just go ahead and chop an onion and cook the rest of the dish. Now that the onions have softened a little, I'm going to go ahead and add in the ground beef. Remember when we made meatballs? Were they so yummy? You like those, huh? They were yummy. So Mike mentioned this to me the other day, and he mentioned that he learned about a recipe that people used to make in the Great Depression, and it was called Hoover stew, because the president at that time was Hoover and everybody didn't like him, so they named the stew after him. And I can link the recipe below. I have not tried it, but it's just pasta, hot dogs, canned tomatoes, canned corn, and canned beans, I believe. I counted up the price for each thing, and I could make... Yes, hot dogs. I could make that recipe for $5, because you can buy a pack of pasta for $1, a pack of hot dogs for $1, a can of beans for $1 or less. and a can of tomatoes and a can of corn, each for less than $1. So you could make that for $5 or maybe even less depending on where you are. Now this part of the recipe always goes really fast, so I make sure to have the garlic chopped up and everything set out and ready to go before I actually mix it all in. So I'm going to put in the garlic first, and then it's going to be 2 teaspoons of parsley, 1 teaspoon of thyme, and then a teaspoon of rosemary. And we like to have plenty of salt, so I usually add in like a teaspoon, but you're more than welcome to do less if you want. A half a teaspoon of pepper. And then I just dump in a bit of Worcestershire sauce. It's supposed to be like a tablespoon, but I just sort of dump a little. And then 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. And then 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. And then you go ahead and add in a cup of chicken broth. I will add in the bouillon cube afterwards. And it's supposed to take a carrot grated, but I forgot to buy one at the store, so I am going to skip that and do more peas, because it's supposed to take 1 cup of peas, but I'm just going to add in an entire can of peas, and then that way it will make up for the loss of the carrot. Another thing I have done already that's absolutely delicious is a can of green beans, and that is just as good as the carrot or the peas. So you can feel free to do different vegetables. Once this is thick, which it's almost done, then we will go ahead and mash the potatoes. I just added some butter, sour cream, milk, and salt to the potatoes. And I usually like to just sort of mash them first with the potato masher, and then I switch to my hand mixer so that they get super creamy and smooth. I just find that this is less messy if I start this way. Now this is the fun part. I'm just gonna go ahead and grab the frying pan, and you put this in the bottom, and then you dump this over the top. Let me smooth that out a little bit more. And now for the last thing, shredded cheese. I used to buy packs of shredded cheese until I realized that you can get so much more cheese if you just buy a block and grate it yourself, which I know is less convenient, but it's just cheaper if you're on a tight budget. So I just do this and grate it myself, and you get so much more cheese. So there you can see this big pile of cheese that I grated from just a small bit of the block. So we're just gonna sprinkle that over the casserole. So now you just bake it at 425 for anywhere from 15 to 25 minutes. Good morning, everybody. We are going to be making breakfast right now, and I'm going to show you how to make apple pie oatmeal. So it just takes half a cup of oatmeal and 2 cups of water. I'm going to go ahead and chop up this apple and put it in there. So now I'm going to add half a teaspoon of cinnamon. And it's supposed to take allspice, but I don't have any, so I just used nutmeg. Just like 1/8 of a teaspoon. And that's it. You just let that boil until the apples are soft and the oatmeal is cooked and the water is absorbed. And then once that's done, you add either honey or sugar to sweeten it.